My name is David Setzer.
Albert Charles Bud Hogan. The Bud is not really part of my name.
Charles Eugene Gibson.
Ann Landis Swan.
My name is Myra.
Jotong Yang.
His name is Jotong Yang.
I was born in 1929 at the foot of Hickory Nut Mountain.
I was born October 19th, 1921 at Tampa, Florida.
You take a blah.
I was born in McDowell County.
I was born in the old Marion General Hospital on James Drive, which is now James Apartments, and just up above City Hall in Marion.
I'm 60. He's 82 years old.
Ooh, older than dirt. No, seriously. I was born in October of 1939.
My name is James Lawton Haney, and that was my father's name, so I am a junior.
Don Doggett.
Haskell Davis.
My name is Virginia Lee McNeil Patch.
I was born on July the 26th, 1932.
I was born in McDowell County, Old Fort, at home.
I married Ruffin County, 1925, August 23rd.
I was born in Lincoln County in the town of Lincolnton. My mother had grown up in rural Lincoln County, and she was a newcomer to McDowell County, and so she wanted to use the services of her family doctor back in Lincoln County, and so she went back there for my birth.
I was born in McDowell County, March the 31st. In 1928, there was a hospital up there on Main Street, straight across from Hotel James.
Hi, my name is Robert Ace Allen Smith.
Joseph R. Kaler.
My name is Lois Hollyfield.
I'm Gladys Williams.
I'm Betty Ruth Washburn, or Bootsy, whichever one you want to put down.
I was born in Raleigh in October of 1946.
January 30th, 1928, in a little community 5 miles south of Marion called Jacktown, across the double railroad tracks.
I was born at home July the 4th, 1928. Back then, everybody's born at home, I believe.
Well, I was born at home August the 11th, 1928.
We're almost the same age, like in a month.
We lived at Turkey Cove then, and my birthday is January the 20th, and I was born 28, and I was born at home.
Now, they had schools at one time in every community, like Cherry Springs and Old Fort, or Bethlehem, and areas like that. Everybody had every community had a school. And in 1932 or 33, they combined all of these schools, and everybody came to Old Fort or Marion.
When we were in the 8th grade, we were a freshman in high school at that time. See, we were 8, 9, 10, 11, and that was our high school. Then they added the 12 years, the 12th grade on.
I went to the Glenwood School, which in those days was both an elementary and a high school. So for all of my 12 years of basic education, I attended the Glenwood School.
I went to school the first year in 1935, and they were building what became the high school building, the auditorium, and the principal's office. I don't think they painted that building the whole time I was in school. There was no money. We had a baseball team, we didn't have a catcher's mitt. It's amazing what the Depression brought.
Well, and back in those days, Glenwood didn't have a gym. We played on the dirt court outside.
I remember those old steamy radiators. It was very cold when we first started to school, and we didn't have any bathrooms when we first started.
Did you have outhouses?
We
sure
had
did.
outside Johns.
We sure did. Some of the older girls would get in there and hold the door, and we couldn't get in. That's true.
They
now.
did not wear pants. Nobody, girls, wore little or big or what. We had to wear long stockings.
Yeah.
Wore long stockings to keep us warm in the wintertime, to go to school.
I go back, as you can tell, a long way. I was in the 4th grade when we got electricity. I remember them wiring our house, and I could not wait until we could have a refrigerator and have ice. I thought that was the most wonderful thing, to have ice, and we did not have it at that time. We did not have a bathroom. We had an outhouse, and so my dad started, even before the electricity was turned on, getting the bathroom built, and we would not have to go outside to an outhouse. To me, those kind of things are memories of my childhood. Another one was that there was only one phone in our whole community. The phone company was owned by Sheriff Ashby Robinson's son, and the wires were strung on just regular old locust poles. And the only phone in our community belonged to my uncle, and the number was like 24. And if you got a call, my aunt would come out and holler a half a mile to our house and tell us that we had a phone call. It was a party line, and if you got on the phone, everybody that had one, which wasn't many, but they could all listen in to what you had to say. It was not private. And that, to me, that's some of the early memories of my childhood.
Back when I was growing up, times was hard. It was right during the Depression and after that. And during the summer, I picked berries, 20 cents a gallon, and carried them from Jacktown, knocked on the doors in Marion and sold them. That's how I bought my clothes. And I remember one particular family, I did it for 2 or 3 years, not just one summer. And I remember one particular family was Miss J.D. Blanton. They owned all the stores here in town, but they knew me so much I had customers that I'd get birds from. And I remember her very well. At the end of the season, she always wanted 2 gallons of green ones. I never could understand, but she gave me a nickel more a gallon to pick them. I cut wood at 50 cents a day, pulpwood on Saturday for John Duncan, 50 cents. And I also worked at Gene Holland's store where he turned into Jacktown.
The first job I had, I was really very young. And I grew up in a family without a father. My mother raised 3 children, and so we sort of got it started at an early age. And a neighbor ran a little neighborhood grocery store that we traded at some, and so I made their acquaintance, and they offered me a job. And I don't remember, but I think that I was either 10 or 11 years old. And the first day there, they put me to dusting a snuff shelf. Now, you kids don't know what snuff is, but it's that foul stuff that people used to put in their mouths and spit. And most of the time it was packaged in paper. And a lot of times the paper would get broken and the snuff would get scattered on the shelf, and that was a mess. But that's the first day's work. So that started my career in the grocery store business. And I'd bag groceries and put up stock and sweep the floor, carry groceries out to the car. That was something that was done at that time. And my first job was really with the idea of helping Mama, because she worked in the lunchroom for a very, very low salary. There were 4 of us, and so we, it was not easy. We had the cow, we had a hog, we raised a garden, we put up and canned as much stuff as we could. There wasn't a lot of refrigeration and ways to preserve food at that time. You canned it or ate it, or so we all worked. My brothers and sisters also worked, and to help Mom.
I would not take anything from my experience on the farm. I had to work, and it wasn't always easy. And but I learned so much from being on the farm and seeing all the things that had to be done. And I just wouldn't take anything from it. I think I learned what the dollar was all about and how hard they are to get and how hard they are to keep. But we basically raised most of what we had, of what we ate. Had to buy the sugar and the coffee and things like that. But we even had wheat that we took to the mill and had it ground and used it for flour or whole wheat. And we killed about 3 hogs a year. My dad was an expert on dressing hogs and saving the meat. We always had country ham for breakfast.
We made great big gardens back then, and Mama and the other children got out and made the gardens, and I had to stay in the house and do all the housework. And I was just 5 or 6 years old, but I always had a little baby to tend to.
I'd like to make another statement. I said that I grew up in a family without a father, but now my mother had a lot of help. She was a member of a family of 10 children. She had 7 brothers and 2 sisters. And so I had a lot of family, strong mentors. My granddaddy made sure that I learned a strong work ethic at a very young age. And if he thought I didn't have anything to do in the summer, he would invent something for us to do. We'd cut pulpwood, or we'd make a garden, or we'd cut firewood, or he taught me to use a double bit axe and a crosscut saw and plow with an Oliver turning plow and do some things that otherwise, except for his pushing me, I would never have had the experience to learn that.
Well, I suppose that one's parents always have a lot to do with this, but I think that my 2 grandfathers were the chief influences in terms of how my career shaped up. My grandfather Haney was very interested in history and in travel. He had served in the Spanish-American War, and in the course of that had traveled all the way around the world, from Cuba to the Philippines, and came home, and he was constantly keeping track of his buddies from the war years, and so he traveled all over the United States to Spanish War American conventions. And so I imbibed a kind of interest in travel from him, and he was very interested, he and his sister, in family history and local history, and I used to sit around and listen to them tell their family stories, and that got me interested somewhat in local history. My other grandfather, Elias Mosteller, from Lincoln County, also exercised an important influence. He was a farmer and a school teacher throughout most of his life, and I always remember my mother repeating things that he had said, and I think those things influenced me. He was always quoted as saying, don't be a follower, be a leader. And my mother tended to push me into leadership positions, which I was really too shy to take on, but my grandfather's influence, I think, came through there.
My grandmother was part Cherokee, although I don't think she knew that when I was growing up. If she did, she never told us. You know, way back, it was a stigma to be Indian. And a lot of people early on were ashamed of that and tried to hide it. But I honestly don't think that she knew that she was. She looked Cherokee, looking back on it. She was a school teacher. She was retired from the Catawba County school system. And she spent my whole youth trying to make a lady out of me, which didn't work, but she tried. And she was, I won't say prim and proper, but she wanted me to use correct English. She wanted me not to scratch there. She wanted me to Not spend so much time outside with Dad, spend more time learning to cook and doing girly things. But that was not me. They managed to rub a little bit of that off on me, but not a whole lot.
It was different time altogether to what it is now. You won't let your child go out of your sight now, hardly. And back then, you didn't knock the doors of a night and didn't peer near nothing back then, because it was a real good time, and it was just different. It's different now. We're afraid of everything.
I think we had more fun, a lot more fun.
Yeah, because they have their computers and different things, and that's what they're messing with. They're not getting out like we did and playing and seeing the others and all that.
Yeah, we got out on Sunday evening, visit our kinfolks, our cousins. We'd all get together, go to the creek and go swimming, and swing on grapevines like monkeys. And we had a good time back then, but they don't do that anymore. They stay with their computers, cell phones.
Drexel had a furniture plant in Marion, Broy Hill. They called it something else, but it was Broy Hill. Marion Manufacturing was there. Cross Mill was there. And I don't remember any more plants. But people went from here to Marion to work. And they even had a bus, an old school bus, that they drove 2 or 3 shifts, 2 or 3 times a day to Beacon Manufacturing. And a lot of people worked at Beacon during the war.
I was 18 years old and I went overseas. I was drafted when I was 18 and finished training, shipped overseas. I was a rifleman. I could hit the side of the barn if I stood close enough to it. Now, I joined the company in the battlefield as a replacement. And wound up in company headquarters, and the platoon runner got killed, and nobody wanted it, and they gave it to me, you know. Never heard of a platoon runner, and I got to the battlefield for crying out loud. I stayed with the company commander and delivered all messages to the platoon, one of the most high-risk jobs in the infantry company. It bogged down, you know, under heavy fire. They got trying to take what protection old Mother Nature gives them. I got to wait up there and tell them to back it up or move forward or whatever, you know what I mean. Well, I don't know, I had a funny feeling that night something wasn't right. And I started not to answer when he called for me, and I did. Some of the other boys didn't. I got captured, I don't know what happened to them, but I answered him. The Germans had got behind our platoon between it and our company commander. And he missed me point blank. If he swung his gun at me, he knocked my head off. He missed me. He's closer to me than you are when he shot at me. It's pitch dark. I couldn't see him. His company was a little farther behind him. He just out on the outpost, as referred to it. And I hit the ground. He thought he killed me. Stood there a little bit. And he reached down, I guess, to get him some souvenirs, and I was very much alive. But he was close to me as you are. When you shot, the gun went right by my side there, missed me. And I hit the ground just ka-plop, you know. He thought he hit me, but he never touched me. And after he got me a prisoner, I don't know what I said among the Germans, but 2 or 3 of them fell all over me, I reckon trying to find blood. Yeah, he couldn't believe he missed me. Well, they pulled me to the rear of the German line did, and eventually I wound up in Germany in a POW camp. I was in Italy when I got captured.
Well, I volunteered November 13th, 1941, and had just finished 3 weeks of basic training at the time Pearl Harbor attack by the Japanese occurred. And because I had had a year of college ROTC and could play the bugle. I was, in about my 4th or 5th week, I was made a company bugler and was an assistant drill instructor. I arrived in Europe the first week of January 1945 and was there for a limited amount of combat. The Battle of the Bulge created a situation that changed our plans. We were staging in California to make the invasion of Japan. Okay. And when the Battle of the Bulge occurred in very early December, we were told to turn in all of our cotton and camouflage uniforms for woolen uniforms.
I was on a work detail, and we sleeping in a barn on the hay. And we told the guards if they didn't run with us, we'd take care of them when it was over. And the front moved through us. The battlefield just moved right through where we was at. And they zeroed us in, the artillery did. And some of the, I believe it was a French POW or somebody begged them not to shell it, says it's for America. And they sent a patrol come around, sneaked in. I happened to be outside, and they shot right up above us on a Jeep or maybe it's a pickup truck, a squad of men. Of course, he got on the radio and told them the whole forest was full of Americans. And I happened to be out there and talked with them. And we had a captain with us. It was a chaplain captured. And I told some of the boys, I said, go down there in the barn and tell Captain so-and-so the Americans up here to come up here and play soldier. Then, you know, that captain. And he said, you got a captain with you? I said, yeah, he's a chaplain. And he hadn't been with us but a few days. And, of course, he got on his radio and told them it was full of Americans. And the Army came down, and well, the infantry was riding trucks and jeeps and tanks and so forth. They just came by and kept going, you know. He told him, he said, that captain at the infantry company said, how's he been treating you, boy? He said, well, we ain't had much to eat, but that's not necessarily their fault. He said, we told them they didn't run with us, we'd take care of them. He said they didn't run, I'll take them POWs. And he called and brought trucks up and loaded them up.
I got the free ship crossing of the Atlantic, and then they had us staging to go to the Philippines and or Japan, and the atomic bomb was dropped, and that changed the plans. So we just went over as replacements for service people who had been in the Pacific from 1942 on.
I wrote to all the boys, and my daddy and mother didn't care a bit to buy stamps for me. Stamps our mail stamps was 6 cents. And they'd buy me a bunch of stamps to put on my letters. And my mother said many a time she's went to sleep listening to, you didn't have good pens back then, my pen would scratch. She said she went to sleep many a night hearing my pen scratch writing letters to the boys. I told them all I loved them and everything. Oh, they loved me too, in their letter. They'd write back. I went and had my picture made and at the studio and had 18 pictures made to send to the boys. I had the boys come in wanting to know when we was going to get married after they come out of service. I said, oh no, I don't want to get married. No. I just told you that while I was writing to you. I just told them to make them feel good. I wrote them a letter and make them feel good. Told them I loved them.
Well, Glenwood High School, when I went, was 11 grades. And in 1946, I was drafted into the Army out of high school. There was 8 of us that went that day. The reason for it was Germany had surrendered, and they thought they was going to have to invade Japan, and they was drafting everybody that came 18. So halfway through they only had the 11th grade in school back in those days. They didn't have the 12th grade. So halfway through it, I was drafted. And so I was gone for about a year. When President Truman dropped a bomb, anybody that's drafted could get out, so I only had to serve about a year.
Well, look, in 1940, the late 43, a group of men came from Oak Ridge. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was about 3 or 4 of them, and they were looking his machine shop over. They had no conversations. He had no idea who they were or what they were. And in about 6 months, they came back and said, "Mr. McNeil, we have looked into your past, and you do have top security. We want to take you to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. We have a thing that's going on that's going to be called the Manhattan Project. And we want you to go over there and take a look at it." He did, and they give him the drawings or the blueprints, and he built what they call the firing pin that went into the little boy bomb. And Dad still had no idea what it consisted of until the real bomb. They built the real bomb and the firing pin from his design that he built at Marion Machine Company. You're looking at what is considered the firing pin or a projectile. It is a dummy shell that the real one was built by at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, that helped in the war. Mr. Roach said the inside of the real one was filled with plutonium. And it's something that will explode. And this was the detonator inside of the little boy.
There was 8 people involved in my family that were affected by World War II. Had 5 brothers and 3 brothers-in-law. All were in service. I lost a brother in the South Pacific in 1943, and lost a brother-in-law in the States on an accident in 44. So we were really hit by the World War II. One of my brothers left his car. He didn't sell it before he went in service. And we would get to come to town once in a while in that car. And we came on a Wednesday night, and I was in the movie theater. And the man that was on the telegraph got the telegram, and he knew I was there. And he came, had him to come and get me, and I went outside. I was only 14 years old. But I actually got the telegram my brother had been killed. It wasn't missing or anything. We regret to inform you that your son has been killed. Has been killed in action. So it was a tough time.
When my son finished high school, they were under the draft. So he had a school deferment to go to college. When he came out of college, he had to answer the draft. And he went straight into service. And then he was in Special Forces, made a Green Beret, but I lost him in Vietnam.
Uncle Sam called me and said, "We want you in the Army." I had my training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and from there, I had requested to be sent to Germany because I wanted to go see the world. And when I went down to see where I was being sent, I was shocked when they said that I was being sent to Fairbanks, Alaska. and all I could picture was an iceberg. But I served 2 years in Fairbanks. I loved it. I was up there during the big earthquake. I have a friend that I was in the Army with. The night that the earthquake hit, we were sitting at the dining room table, and I said, "I'm getting dizzy." And he said, "No, we're having an earthquake." And so we both ran to the door. They told us never to run outside. The ground could swallow us. And so he said, "Lord, for all the bad things I've done, please forgive me," because we thought it was going to be over. At that time, I forgot how many deaths there were, but the Penny's store in Anchorage was like 10 stories high, and after the earthquake, it was totally level. And half of the city of Anchorage went down a whole level. The street had to make it to where it was. So it was terrible. And my mother and dad could not get in touch with me because they had no idea whether they heard about the earthquake, but they didn't know, about me until I guess it was weeks later. I thought I would be sent to Vietnam. That was going on during the time I was serving. And I had a friend that worked, two friends that was there with me on base that ended up dying in Vietnam.
Well, the draft was going, this was in 1967, and I felt I was soon to be drafted, and so one of my college friends from Charlotte and I decided to go into the Navy and be jet mechanics. We were both mechanically inclined, and we had signed up and already had a class date to go to the basic camp that they have in the Navy, their equivalent of basic training at Great Lakes. And my cousin came down from Maryland and told me about this great program the Army had of Warrant Officer Flight Training Program. And so we went down and talked to the recruiter, and he told me, look, judging by my test scores and things, I could do anything the Army had. And I said, put that in writing. And they said it'd be at least 6 months before you'd have to go. And I was in Charlotte on my way to basic training 7th of March. I ended up graduating in April of '68, so it was almost a year process there. I was selected to go to Aircraft Maintenance Officer School based on academic performance. That was 13 weeks at Fort Eustis, Virginia, at the Transportation School, where they taught us various maintenance procedures, test flying procedures and stuff. And so I was fortunate enough to go, when I got to Vietnam, to go to a maintenance unit. We were a backup direct support and for about 400 aircraft. I would go out and perform a set of checks on it, based on what had been done to the aircraft, and it was kind of the guinea pig. I was selected to go to fixed wing qualification course, which was pretty hard to get, and that was en route to Vietnam for the second tour. When I got to Vietnam, one of the officers I'd worked for at Fort Gordon was in charge of a signal unit that had fixed wing airplanes. That's what I'd hoped to fly. And when I checked with him, he told me no, I was, since I was had a maintenance background, I was going to go back to the same large organization I went to the first time. And so I ended up in the same battalion about 10 miles away from where I'd been the first time, which was really good because I knew the area that way. When I got there, they had started the legal push into Cambodia, and our unit had a aircraft recovery operation with a Chinook helicopter, a big tandem rotor heavy lifter, and a UH-1 Huey rigging ship, and specially trained people to go out and strap up and hook up a crashed or shot down or just broken aircraft. And so I flew the rigging ship for about 2 weeks into Cambodia, and we slung out numerous downed aircraft. I was very fortunate, didn't get shot at. Yeah, one of the units we supported there at Cu Chi, where I was at, had a medical unit, 159th medevac. So we went out and flew, and my recollection is in 5 hours of flying that day, we hauled around 50 wounded. One time, as I was landing in a in the pickup zone, the mortar came right over the top of us and landed in front of us. And we took off right quick and went out and waited for them to engage where they thought the mortars came from. And we went back in and picked up more people than we had planned on picking up.
Anh nhớ là cũng có cho cái chúng để nghe我找你来的去了回来了嘛。
Vietnam War started. I remember I moved place to place, and then at night the parents just go then very bright, and the moon, full moon is very bright, and we move on the dog.
nhớ thì nhớ là cái có chỗ tôi nó này早上就台上都是我说不给多少嘞，因为走了就忙了嘞，就是嘛。但我搞这种的，我到底就当在家里不搞木炭，就没干在木炭，就我注意找什么的嘛。
Everybody had to fight. Then he had no choice, just go and fight. Then after that, then the American leave us. Then General Van Powell, he said he go and what about us? Then the jury, his name is Jury, I think. Then he said, don't worry, go there, I'm taking care. Then everybody had to follow him. Only they pick up the plane. Because in the Vietnam's using the red marker to marker everybody's name. Then who check, then who's served, they all red marker. They had to leave. Then my husband and all my brother. Then my husband's family didn't go with our boss, General Powell. But my husband said, if I don't go, he had to go because his name on the red marker. Then I said, okay, go that time. Then my brother had a lot of kids. Everybody get to the airport, and then they didn't pick up the whole Hmong country. They pick up only the highest family, like a general or the people like have more important family. They pick up only that family. Then my brother got a lot of kids. He lose. He cannot get in the plane. He lost. I don't know why I get in the plane too. Only my sister-in-law, my brother go hunt for water for the kids. And my sister-in-law say, you better help me to hold one little girl's hand. Then that time the planes come. Then I carry my son. I have only one son, only one child that time. I tie my son in my bag. Then I grab my niece. I grab my suitcase, and then thousand people behind me and push me inside the plane. That time I get in the plane and turn around. Only my uncle and my aunt and my cousin and his wife. And my uncle almost died in the plane because too many people. And all my brother and my mom and my other brother, my husband get lost. They didn't go pick up nobody no more. That's it, my plane is the last one.
你说真的， dùng nho là bút rồi bút cho tuột thằng thôi bút cho mình nho rồi bút lại ra thằng ông tốt vào đó là sao cổ lên ấy.
They took him to Vietnam, border Vietnam.
Trong cơn thành nhớ là chế độ áo chồng sau chụp một xóa của gì trong cây trong tập của cô hát rồi là bé chồng cơ bé chồng bố mà cho cô nữa tôi này dùng nhau bố chỉ cơ bố chỉ là sản lượng sao còn nhớ nhau để bố là tôi rồi mình dặn rồi cũng tôi rồi mình dặn rồi bây giờ chúng mình thấy là chứ lúc mà chẳng cần nó một rồi nhớ mình dặn đây mình chỉ tôi chứ sao mà chứ ôn nó đó cũng chỉ nhau thôi mình rất là cũng tuổi nóแต่กูตัวนั่นแหละกูอันนั้นชื่อตรงสามตัวจริงว่าเลยกูหนาว่าสารคนแล้วเราจะเห็นยอดจัดการนั่นแหละก็ชื่อนั้นใช่แต่ก็ตัวนู้ชื่อตัวเลย
He sent picture to us, then we know he's still alive. Then we send money to buy plane ticket and make a paperwork. Then he made a passport to came over to us. Then he just stay and never go back.
Long xa là cũng tốt rồi thích hả cô tôi sẽ chia sẻ long xa rồi hả long xa rồi đúng không?
I never wanted to live anywhere else. Still don't.
I wouldn't have wanted to have lived anywhere other than Western North Carolina. What's that old saying? American by birth, Southern by the grace of God. That's kind of the way I feel.